What's up guys, it's Talon here, and in today's video, we have Peterbot's absolute insane world record 40 bomb in the solo Victory Cup finals. Peterbot is obviously going to be landing Grim Gates, and initially just 50-50s for this chest here and gets it instantly. Now, he sees an opponent just outside, and after getting some barrels, quickly pushes him and takes care of him as well. There's one more opponent that he needs to worry about before he can claim the boss, and this was due to the fact that he got a ton of information of who was landing around him when flying in. He starts off here with a little bit of chip damage on this last opponent, and as the opponent tries to dash away, he uses the relentless pressure as well as all of the dashes around the island to easily catch him up and clean up this elimination. And now it's time to go for the boss. Before he's able to claim the boss though, a third party ends up showing off, but he starts off with some good chip damage here, and then times an jump in exploit perfectly here when the opponent is splashing to easily clean up this elimination. He is immediately third party though after claiming the boss, but see what he does here to easily win this fight. He makes 2 boxes worth of space and catches the opponent being over aggressive and now is trapped in his piece. He doesn't hit him for a great amount of damage. However, as the opponent actually ends up panicking, he gets right into Peterbot's face and he cleans this up. Now, this next engagement is the most important pretty much of the entire game, since this is against a very quality other professional player in Dark. He starts off by eating around 70 damage, but take a look at how he makes 2 boxes worth of space and then capitalizes on the opponent over aggressing. This causes the opponent to eventually back off, and they're going to get into a pretty extended box fight. Notice how Peter here is never swinging his pickaxe more than once initially. He then uses the dash feature to get height here, and then he smartly takes a mini and uses the just at 4 using the DMR here to take it and then hit the opponent for a little bit of chip damage. The opponent eventually is going to run out of mats, and Peter knows this, and he continues to play very cautious, switching up his angles here. He does get a cone in here, and eventually ends up hitting the opponent for around 20, hits him for 70, and then the opponent just runs at him, and he cleans up this elimination against this very quality player. Peter, after this, is going to get into a very drawn-out box fight where he ends up wasting a good amount of time. Fortunately, though, for Peterbot, since he had already so many eliminations, he outmounted this opponent who tried to run away initially, and eventually the opponent tried to full disengage but ended up running out of materials, and Peterbot was easily able to go dash over to him and clean him up. Now he's going to go on the offensive here since there's a significant amount of players around this area, and he has the dash point obviously, so he's able to close a ton of distance. An interesting combination, he ends up using the DMR here to open up 115-ish damage onto this opponent and immediately uses the dash coin to catch up right to where the opponent's going to be. He jumps in on the opponent who doesn't cover his head and cleans up this fight very easily. He then sees an opponent in the distance building and is going to immediately swim over to him directly. He tries here with the DMR to start off with some chip damage, but eventually wants to close the distance here, and then uses the dash feature to take height, coning off this opponent very nicely here, sitting on a right-hand peak, and then using that DMR to apply a little bit of pressure. Look at this great switch here that Peterbot does. He goes from the top angle, then drops back to the weak wall, takes it, and starts off with a 126 damage. Uses the dash coin to once again take height, and as the opponent drops down, uses the dash again to get an angle where the opponent's going to be, and cleans him up easily. He gets immediately third party though, quickly pops a fish, and then gets these med kits. Make sure to have good reload management here because it's very important with the shotgun. He catches the opponent being over aggressive, he immediately piece controls him, and the opponent is just spraying at his wall with no regard for pre-fires or anything like that, and he easily, once after pre-firing him, attacks from the top and cleans up this elimination. Peterbot is then going to WP this opponent who's initially trying to disengage. However, after getting some chip damage and starting off right on the opponent's wall, he ends up hitting a 140 shot here, but the edit was incredibly wide and he nearly gets taken out as the opponent sprays at him. He immediately heals back up and realizes the opponent is busy behind a wood wall. He takes it first try, hits a peanut butter bean, cracks the opponent's shield, and then cleans up this fight. The next engagement, as Peterbot ends up seeing this opponent who's boxed up around gas station, and the opponent starts off with a little bit of chip damage. However, he plays too aggressive here. Peterbot cones him off, full pieces him here, and cleans up this engagement incredibly quick. Kill 13 is a little bit drawn out. After he ends up taking 50 damage, he ends up getting a little bit of chip damage as the opponent eventually ends up trying to disengage from this fight. and it is now a much more even fight. Peterbot is then going to use the dash feature here to eventually take high ground from the opponent, where nearly full pieces him, but only hits him for around 30 damage. The opponent is trying to back off here, but his SMG pressure here is too much, and then he ends up cracking the opponent's shield. The opponent is using a ton of mats and space, but Peterbot's SMG pressure here and good jump here allows him to easily clean up this fight when the opponent ends up trying to take a flopper. Kill 14, Peterbot is really going to show the use of the Flowberry Fizz and the dash feature to end these fights so quickly. After taking a little bit of damage, the opponent tries to disengage, however Peter pops a Flowberry Fizz, ends up getting a little bit of chip damage, and then dashing perfectly where the opponent's going to be, getting the front wall, editing a peanut butter piece, and cleaning up this kill very fast. After immediately picking up this elimination, he is third-partied by people that are at the launch pad. Eventually, he ends up getting right on this opponent's wall, but doesn't hit him for a lot of damage once he ends up taking the wall. He jumps back onto the opponent's wall, but this time the opponent times it perfectly and he ends up eating 75 damage, slowing him up a bit. However, the opponent tries to rebox and heal, and Peterbot once again smartly positions between him and the third party, but eventually just gets on the wall, takes it first try, and ends up hitting the opponent with 2 shots and cleaning him up. He knows there was another opponent here, and the opponent was just sitting in the roof, and so he uses the wall that he controls to see where the opponent is and hits 2 shots and gets another free elimination. Peterbot eventually tries to go up to the island that spawns, and that opponent immediately tries to disengage. However, Peterbot uses the Flowberry Fizz effect to try and get up to him. Unfortunately, though, his kill ends up getting stolen, so immediately pushes that opponent who stole his kill, takes the wall first try, and cleans up. The other opponent that is also on this river eventually also tries to end up fighting him, but as he pushes, the opponent falls right into his box, and he ends up two-tapping him here, taking him out very quickly. Peterbot is then going to go to Restored Reels and ends up third-partying the fight, full-piecing this opponent here, nearly getting him to go down. However, the opponent ends up having dashes and running away, but Peterbot does some fantastic tracking here, reads where the opponent is in this box as he tries to disengage, and cleans up this elimination. Now, there's another opponent that he was fighting that he immediately goes back to, and they eventually get into a little bit of a build battle, but just take note how Peterbot cleans up this kill so easily. He starts off here on a right-hand peek, and as the opponent immediately edits on him, he hits him for around 120 damage, and then immediately places a ramp over his head, once again when the opponent re-edits, cleaning him up here very easily. After picking those 2 eliminations up, he decides to Flowberry Fizz and dash onto this opponent who's in a wood structure. Initially, he doesn't end up picking the wall, but as the opponent stuffs mechanically, he ends up taking the wall here, hitting 2 easy shots, and then cleaning him up with the SMG. Take a look at how he approaches this next fight. Since he knows he's on the edge of zone and can get easily third party, he starts off here with a lot of a more safe approach. Fortunately for him, though, the opponent ends up trying to disengage right to where the river is that he can dash in. He gets a dash refresh from that river and immediately cuts him off here, landing perfectly and cleaning up these 2 free kills. Kill 23 ends up taking a lot of heals from Peterbot here as the opponent edits a right-hand peek on him eventually, and he only hits him for 40, thus forcing him to use all of his splashes. This means that Peterbot knows that he has to get in here to eventually end up getting those materials and kills back. And as the opponent makes a peanut butter peek on him as he's swinging on the wall, he ends up placing a cone in, and the opponent ends up missing, and he's able to easily clean up this elimination, which didn't start off that great. After picking up this elimination, unfortunately, Peterbot's pace ends up slowing down a little bit, and he doesn't get any eliminations for a while. He eventually is fortunate enough to see an opponent who's getting WP'd wood and immediately goes to it, and there ends up being 3 people involved. He ends up picking up one of those eliminations, but as one of the opponents is very weak, he ends up stalling him here, and he's stuck in the storm in a 5-tick, and now has to use his dashes with an entire established lobby in front of him. Peterbot here is fortunate enough, once he gets in, to see the opponent that was incredibly weak and gets a free elimination onto that opponent. As he's rotating with this maximum zone, he W-keys an opponent who isn't blocking his back and starts off with a significant amount of damage. Unfortunately, though, due to the position, he's going to get third party to pit here, but eventually is fortunate enough, as that opponent is getting sprayed, to clean up this elimination really before getting it to the end. Peterbot here, before going to this endgame, is actually going to make a mistake that nearly cost him. He sees this opponent before the moving zone starts, and he W keys him initially. However, when he drops down, the opponent edits on him, but he plants the wall. He does make a peek here. However, the quality of the movement isn't that good. He ends up eating a significant amount of damage, all the while getting third party and going down to sub 50 HP. As the zone is moving, Peterbot is going to be in a pretty sticky situation, but he does have the dash coin to really help him out here. He's looking to pick up a couple of free eliminations, which he does when he hits this opponent who's incredibly weak. And as another opponent is trying to get in, he just ends up 2-tagging him here to get another free 2 eliminations before the moving zone starts. The moving zone is finally here, but before it pulls, he ends up seeing this fish skin and ends up hitting for 103, predicting where he's going to drop and immediately getting in and getting another free elimination. There's another opponent on a slaying lair, and he uses hard mats to immediately tarp over. Eventually, though, he's going to do a good amount of damage, and that opponent is going to go down the storm right before the moving zone starts. Now, let's take a look at Peterbot, as he ends up challenging height here, chopping him out, but after this, he ends up eating a little bit of damage, so he slows down a bit to claim some high ground. And then as he sees an opponent try to go on his height, he sprays on the low ground and decides to not play it. He's continually doing a significant amount of damage to opponents. However, he doesn't have the best amount of materials. Good reload managed in here, but he's constantly looking backside, and he ends up taking off an opponent who is trying to fizz. Same thing with this opponent who's stuck on the backside. He immediately predicts where that opponent's going to go down to low ground, gets another free elimination, but due to the fact that it's a dash point, it's alright. He sees his opponent getting pressured, uses the Metro Classic to get in, and he sees that opponent still getting pressured. Eventually, he ends up playing the cone here, getting another kickoff before the next zone is pulled. Now we're up to 33 eliminations, and we have full cap mats. Height gets awareness check here, and he hits him for 100. Eventually, he sees that the opponent's going to go up, uses the shotgun, clicks exploit there to get in and clean up that fight and claim height, and now we're at 34 kills. Uses the dash here to catch this opponent on backside, and once again, the W King is just so quick and fast, it's hard to even keep up. He sees his opponent who's waiting out to edit, hits him for a good amount of damage, and then tracks where he is so he can hopefully secure this elimination. Instead of jumping in 50-50, he ends up waiting backside for his opponent to land and hits 2 nice shots, but unfortunately ends up eating a good amount of damage from height, and this time he has to stop W King to heal up just for a little bit, but doesn't have the best heals. Uses the dash effect, perfectly lands, hits a kid for 100, does a nice 3-tile and cleans him up. This opponent flying in the air, he hits him with the shotgun and nearly takes him out with the SMG, but he has no mats and eventually does clean him up. Now we're up to 38 with 3 more kills. Opponent stuck on backside. It's now a 1v2 situation, and he has the dash. Does a good job of protecting his head here, knowing that there's an opponent above him. Now he wants to slow down just a little bit so he knows he can secure the 40. Love this here. Use of the Flowberry Fizz to get up on height, and then use the dash to secure it. Cracks the opponent's shield because of that, and eventually cleans him up. And now he has the 40 bombs, but it's not going to be an easy 1v1 since the opponent's full shield. But he starts off here with 2 good SMG shots, and then uses a DC ramp here to get some good angles. Now only has 17 builds, so he has to play this out incredibly smart. He does know he's at health advantage. Fantastic there to edit that. The opponent shoots and he gets a 100 tag on this opponent, and now all he needs to do here is clean this up at full HP. Still has 4 builds to work with. The opponent, I think, has finally run out of mats, and he easily gets this 40 bomb on a right-hand peak with a very toward the end game. And overall, this wasn't a perfect W King performance. However, the efficiency in endgame was the thing that stuck out the most to me. The ability to end fights so quickly into endgame here is really what allowed him to drop this 40 bomb, because, to be honest, his early game and mid game was nowhere near as clean. Well, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope that you did enjoy. If you did, please drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on post notifications. And I hope I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.